The first mistake. You're already doing it. Right now, somewhere in your life, you're over-explaining. A decision you made, a boundary you set, a choice that didn't require defense. And you think you're being clear. You're not. Explanation is not clarity. It's something else entirely. The moment you explain yourself, you lose position. Not because explanation is inherently wrong, but because of what it signals. Because of what happens in the space between your words and their reception. You explain to clarify, but what actually happens is this: you invite evaluation. You think you're providing context. What you're doing is handing over leverage. A woman declines a dinner invitation. She could stop there. Instead, she lists 3 reasons why she can't attend. The reasons are true. They're reasonable. But now the person asking isn't just hearing no. They're weighing her reasons, deciding if they're good enough, wondering if she would have said yes under different circumstances. She didn't clarify anything. She just opened herself up for negotiation. This isn't about honesty. It's not about communication. It's about power. And if you misunderstand this distinction, you will explain even more. You'll think the problem is that you weren't clear enough, that you didn't give enough detail, that people just don't understand you yet. They understand you perfectly. What you don't understand is what explanation does to your position. Explanation is not neutral. Every time you explain, you're answering a question that wasn't asked. You're defending a choice that didn't require defense. You're lowering yourself to the level of someone who needs permission. And once you do that, you can't undo it. A manager announces a policy change at work. No explanation, just the decision. Some employees are confused. Some are annoyed, but the policy stands. Another manager makes the same announcement, then spends 10 minutes explaining why it was necessary, listing the reasons, justifying the choice. The second manager thinks they're being transparent. What they've actually done is invite challenge. Because now it's not just a policy. It's a policy with reasons. And reasons can be questioned, disputed, rejected. The first manager gave a decision. The second manager gave an argument. You do this constantly. In relationships, at work, with strangers, with people you care about. You think you're being mature, communicating, setting clear expectations. What you're actually doing is teaching people that your decisions are negotiable. Most people believe explanation is a courtesy, a sign of respect, a way to show you care about being understood. But here's what they don't see. Explanation always lowers the explainer, not because the content is weak, but because the act itself is submission. You're saying, without saying it directly, that you need their approval, that your choice requires their acceptance to be valid. And once you've said that, you've already lost. There's a version of you that doesn't explain. That version makes decisions and lets them stand, sets boundaries without apology, moves through the world without constantly defending their position. That version exists, but you won't become them by explaining yourself better. You'll become them by stopping. This book will not teach you how to explain more effectively. It will show you why explanation itself is the problem, why it weakens you, why it exposes you, why it turns every choice into a negotiation you didn't agree to enter, and why the people who hold the most power in your life rarely explain anything at all. If you keep reading, you'll see things you can't unsee. You'll notice how often you defend choices that don't need defending. How quickly you justify yourself to people who haven't earned an explanation. How much energy you spend trying to make others comfortable with your decisions. And you'll realize something uncomfortable. You've been doing this your entire life. The moment you explain, you shift downward. Not always visibly, not always immediately, but happens. And once you see it, you can't go back to thinking explanation is harmless. This is where it starts. Chapter 1. Explanation is submission. You were trained to explain yourself, not explicitly, not in a single conversation or lesson, but trained nonetheless. As a child, you made choices, small ones, what to play with, where to sit, what to say, and almost every time someone asked you why. Why did you pick that toy? Why did you sit there? Why did you say that? The question wasn't innocent. It was a test, and the correct answer was never silence. You learned early that choices without explanations were suspicious. That decision-making required justification. That if you couldn't explain yourself, your choice didn't count. So you started explaining, and you never stopped. A man buys a car, not an extravagant one, just a car. A friend asks why he chose that model. The question is casual. The man answers. He lists features, compares prices, mentions fuel efficiency. The friend nods. But something has shifted. The man didn't just share information. He defended a purchase. He justified a choice that was already made. He turned a done deal into something that could be evaluated. And now, in some small way, his decision feels less solid. Not because the friend disagreed, but because the act of explaining made the choice negotiable. This is what explanation does. It reframes your decision as something that requires external validation, even when no one asked for it, even when the choice was entirely yours to make. The act itself is submission. You see this everywhere once you start looking. A woman sets a boundary with her family. She won't be attending a holiday gathering. The decision is hers. It's final, but she doesn't say that. She explains. She lists her reasons. Work obligations, prior commitments, stress. Her family listens. Then they problem solve, offer solutions, suggest compromises. Because she didn't give them a decision. She gave them a case to argue against. Explanation is not clarity. It's positioning. It's framing. It's a subtle negotiation where you've already agreed to be the defendant. And the moment you step into that role, you lose. The difference between acting and justifying is everything. Acting is final. Justifying is open. Acting says, this is what's happening. Justifying says, this is what's happening if you approve. One holds position. The other surrenders it. A CEO announces layoffs. No explanation beyond the decision itself. Employees are angry, confused, demand to know why. The CEO says nothing. Another CEO makes the same announcement, then explains market conditions, restructuring, long-term sustainability. The first CEO is hated, but the decision stands. Immovable, unarguable. The second CEO is also hated, but now the employees have something to challenge. They question the reasoning, dispute the logic, argue that the explanation doesn't hold up. The first CEO made a decision. The second CEO made a case. Position never explains itself. Think about the last time someone with real power over you explained their decision in detail. Not a polite update, a full justification. Reasons, context, an attempt to make you understand. It doesn't happen often because power doesn't explain. It acts. And when you explain, you're signaling that you're not operating from that place. This doesn't mean you never communicate. It means you recognize the difference between informing and defending. Informing is clean. Here's what's happening. Here's what you need to know. Defending is reactive. Here's why I did this. Here's why it makes sense. Here's why you should accept it. One holds frame. The other breaks it. You explain because you want approval. Not consciously. Not always. But the impulse is there. You want the other person to agree, to understand, to validate your choice. An explanation feels like the path to that. But here's what actually happens. The more you explain, the more you train people to expect it. A manager gives an assignment. An employee asks why they were chosen. The manager explains. Skills, availability, project fit. The next time an assignment comes, the employee asks again. Because the manager taught them that decisions come with explanations. That choices can be questioned. That authority is something you earn through justification. Now, every decision requires a defense. This is the trap. Explanation doesn't satisfy people. It trains them. It trains them to expect more, to question more, to treat your decisions as starting points for negotiation. And the more you explain, the weaker your position becomes. There are people in your life who never explain themselves. You've noticed. You've probably been frustrated by it. They make decisions, set boundaries, change plans, and they don't offer reasons. It bothers you because you were taught that explanation is respect, that withholding it is rude. But watch what happens. Their decisions stick. Their boundaries hold. Their choices aren't debated because they didn't invite debate. You think you're being mature when you explain? You're not. You're being reactive. You're positioning yourself as someone whose choices require external validation. And once you do that, you've already agreed to let someone else decide if your decision is good enough. Explanation is learned behavior. It's not instinct. It's conditioning, and it can be unlearned. But not by explaining better, not by finding clearer words, not by being more transparent, by stopping. The question you should be asking isn't how to explain yourself more effectively. It's why you think you need to explain it all, and what happens when you don't. Later, you'll see exactly how explanation turns into interrogation, how the first defense leads to the second, how the moment you justify one choice, you're expected to justify all of them. But first, you need to see the question hiding behind every explanation you've ever given, the one you didn't know you were answering. Chapter 2. The hidden question behind every explanation. Every explanation is an answer, but not to the question that was asked, to the question underneath. When you explain yourself, you think you're providing clarity, context, reasoning. What you're actually doing is answering a question no one said out loud. Is this okay? A woman tells her partner she's going out with friends. The partner doesn't ask where or why, but she explains anyway. Lists the friends, mentions the location, estimates when she'll be back. She thinks she's being considerate. What she's doing is asking for permission. Not explicitly, not in words, but the act of explaining carries the question, is this acceptable to you? And once you ask that question, the answer matters. This is where most people think they're being mature, communicating, keeping the other person informed, and they fail because explanation isn't neutral. It's positional, and the position it takes is, I need you to approve of this. You see this at work constantly. An employee decides to take a personal day. They don't need to explain. The policy allows it, but they do anyway. They email their manager, list reasons, apologize for the inconvenience, offer to make up the work. They think they're being professional. What they've done is reframe a right as a favor. The hidden question is always the same. Is this okay with you? Do you accept this? Am I allowed? And the moment you ask it, even implicitly, you've handed over control. People with power don't ask this question. They inform. They state. They move forward. A CEO takes a week off. No explanation. No apology. No list of reasons. Just, I'll be unavailable. There's no question embedded in that. No request for approval. It's a statement. And statements don't require permission. But you were taught that explanation is respect. That withholding your reasoning is cold, dismissive, arrogant. So you explain, because it feels like the right thing to do. And what you don't see is the cost. A father tells his teenage son he can't borrow the car. The son asks why. The father explains. Insurance, responsibility, trust. The son argues, disputes the reasoning, offers counterpoints. Now it's a negotiation. Another father says no. Just no. The son asks why. The father doesn't answer. The son is frustrated, but there's nothing to argue against. The first father thought he was being fair, transparent, teaching his son to understand decisions. The second father held position. Explanation invites challenge. Not always, not immediately, but it does. Because once you give reasons, those reasons can be questioned. And if your reasons can be questioned, your decision can be overturned. This doesn't mean you're always wrong to explain. It means you need to recognize what you're doing when you do. You're not just sharing information. You're opening a door. And once that door is open, you can't easily close it. The hidden question doesn't come from the other person. It comes from you. You're the one asking if it's okay, if they'll accept it, if your choice is valid. And the act of explaining is your way of seeking that validation. A woman declines a job offer. The recruiter asks why. She explains, better fit elsewhere. Timing, career, trajectory. She thinks she's being polite. What she's doing is justifying a decision that doesn't require justification. The recruiter doesn't need to know why. They need to know the answer is no. But by explaining, she's signaled that her decision is something she feels the need to defend. And now the recruiter pushes back, offers more money, better terms, a counteroffer, because she didn't close the door. She left it ajar. Powerful figures rarely explain intentions. They state them. A director casts an actor. No explanation, just the decision. People speculate, analyze, criticize, but the decision stands. Another director casts an actor and explains the choice in interviews. Talks about the audition, the vision, the fit. Now the choice is debatable. People argue whether the reasoning holds up, whether the explanation justifies the decision. The first director made a choice. The second director made a case. This is the pattern. Explanation turns decision into argument. It reframes certainty as something that needs to be proven. And once you step into that frame, you're no longer the one in control. You do this with small things, daily things. Why you ordered that meal, why you chose that route, why you said no to an invitation. Most of the time, no one actually cares, but you explain anyway, because you've internalized the idea that choices without reasons are incomplete. They're not. Choices are complete the moment they're made. Explanation is what you add when you're not sure they'll stand on their own. There's a version of this that people mistake for confidence. Over-explaining with conviction, listing reasons forcefully, defending your choice with certainty. But that's not confidence. That's insecurity disguised as clarity. Confidence doesn't defend. It states and stops. You've been taught that silence is evasive, that refusing to explain is disrespectful, that people deserve to know your reasoning. But here's what no one told you. They don't. Not always. Not by default. Sometimes the decision is enough. And when you act like it isn't, when you feel compelled to explain every choice you make, you're teaching people that your decisions are conditional, that they only count if others agree with the reasoning behind them. Later, you'll see what happens when explanation becomes routine, how it shifts from occasional defense to constant justification, how people stop accepting your decisions and start evaluating them, how explanation trains others to interrogate you. But first, you need to see what happens the moment you explain. What changes, what you lose, what you invite into the space between decision and acceptance. Chapter 3. How explanation invites judgment. The first explanation is never the last. You explain once. You think it's over. It's not. What happens after you explain is this. People start evaluating, not just listening, not just understanding, weighing, measuring, deciding if your reasoning is good enough. A man tells his friend he's moving to a different city. The friend asks why. The man explains. New job, lower cost of living, a fresh start. The friend nods, then says, but what about your family, your network? Won't you regret leaving? The man wasn't asking for advice. He was sharing a decision. But because he explained, the decision became something to be analyzed. This is what explanation does. It turns a closed loop into an open question. Your choice is no longer final. It's provisional, pending approval. And approval is something people feel entitled to withhold. Explanation is an invitation, not to understand, to judge. You think you're providing context. What you're doing is handing over the right to evaluate your reasoning. And once someone has that right, they'll use it. You see this in professional settings all the time. A manager implements a new policy. She explains why. Efficiency, team dynamics, long-term goals. Her team listens. Then they push back, argue that the reasoning doesn't account for specific situations, that the explanation reveals flaws in the logic. If she hadn't explained, the policy would simply be the policy. But she opened it up, and now it's being litigated. The moment you explain, you invite evaluation. And evaluation always positions the evaluator above you, because they're the ones deciding if your reasons are sufficient. This isn't about whether your explanation is good. It's about the structure of the interaction itself. Explanation creates a hierarchy, and you're not at the top of it. A woman sets a boundary with her parents. She won't be hosting holidays this year. They ask why. She explains. Stress, exhaustion, the need for rest. Her parents listen. Then they counter, suggest compromises, offer to help, insist it won't be that hard. She didn't ask for solutions. She stated a boundary. But because she explained, the boundary became negotiable. Explanation is an open invitation to be corrected, to be told your reasoning is insufficient, that your choice doesn't make sense, that you should reconsider. And the more detailed your explanation, the more points of attack you create. Contrast this with the person who states and stops. No explanation, no reasoning, just the decision. People are confused, frustrated. They ask why, and the person says nothing. Or, because that's what I've decided. It's uncomfortable. It feels cold, but the decision holds, because there's nothing to argue against. You think explanation makes you reasonable. It doesn't. It makes you vulnerable. Every reason you give is a point of entry, a place where someone can challenge you, dispute your logic, question your priorities. And once they do, you're in a debate you didn't agree to. A freelancer raises their rates. A client asks why. The freelancer explains. Increased demand, rising costs, market standards. The client counters, points out that the previous rate was fair, that the increase seems steep, that other freelancers charge less. Now the freelancer is defending their decision instead of enforcing it. The rate increase is no longer a fact. It's a proposal, subject to negotiation. This is the cost of explanation. You think you're being transparent. What you're doing is creating leverage for the other person. Leverage they didn't have before you spoke. People who explain are overexposed. They reveal too much, share too much, give others too many openings, and then they wonder why their decisions don't stick. The person who doesn't explain is protected, not by secrecy, by finality. Their decision is complete, self-contained, not subject to external review. And that drives people insane, because they can't find the weak point, the argument, the place to push back. You've been on both sides of this. You've explained yourself and watched people pick apart your reasoning. And you've encountered people who refused to explain and felt frustrated by it. But notice what happened in each case. When you explained, your decision became uncertain. When they didn't, their decision remained solid. Explanation doesn't just invite judgment. It requires it. Because once you've given reasons, the other person has to decide if those reasons are good enough. And that decision is now theirs to make. A teenager asks to stay out late. The parent says no. The teenager asks why. The parent explains. School night. Safety. Rules. The teenager argues. Points out exceptions. Questions the logic. Disputes the reasoning. Another parent says no. Just no. The teenager asks why. The parent doesn't engage. The teenager is angry. But there's no argument to make. The first parent thought they were teaching responsibility, being fair. The second parent held position. Explanation shifts power from the person making the decision to the person evaluating it. And once that shift happens, it's difficult to reverse. You explain because you think it will create understanding. But understanding isn't what you get. You get scrutiny, analysis, judgment. And the moment someone judges your reasoning, they're positioned above your decision. This doesn't mean every explanation is wrong. It means you need to see what you're doing when you explain. You're not just communicating. You're submitting your choice for review. And reviews don't always go your way. Later, you'll see why explanation turns into interrogation. How the first question leads to the second. How one explanation demands another. How the moment you justify yourself once, you're expected to do it again, and again, and again. But here's what you need to understand now. Explanation doesn't protect you. It exposes you. And exposure is not the same as clarity. How explanation destroys power. Chapter 4. Explanation creates access. There's a difference between giving information and giving access. Information is clean. Here's what you need to know. Here's what's happening. Here's the outcome. Access is something else. Access is entry to your reasoning, your priorities, your internal logic. And the moment you explain, you grant it. A manager denies a promotion request. The employee asks why. The manager explains. Performance metrics, team dynamics, timing. The manager thinks they're being transparent. What they've done is expose the criteria. Now the employee knows exactly what to optimize for, what to emphasize, what to challenge. The decision is no longer opaque. It's a formula, and formulas can be gamed. This is what explanation does. It reveals the machinery behind your decisions. And once people see the machinery, they can manipulate it. Access is leverage. Not always, not immediately, but it accumulates. Every explanation you give is a map of how you think, what you value, what moves you, and people who have that map can use it. A woman tells her partner why she doesn't want to attend a family event. She lists reasons: social exhaustion, past conflicts, the need for space. Her partner listens, then, later, uses those exact reasons against her. You said you needed space, but you went out with your friends last weekend. You said social events exhaust you, but you seemed fine at that party. She didn't just explain her decision. She gave him the framework to question every future decision. Explanation exposes internal logic, and once that logic is visible, it can be tested, challenged, reversed. You think explanation builds trust. Sometimes it does, but more often it builds vulnerability, because trust requires mystery, distance, the assumption that you know what you're doing without needing to prove it. Explanation removes that assumption. A consultant advises a client to change their strategy. The client asks why. The consultant explains: market trends, competitive analysis, long-term positioning. The client nods, then hires a different consultant who offers the opposite advice. Because the first consultant revealed their reasoning, made it debatable, turned expertise into opinion. The second consultant simply stated the recommendation. No explanation, no justification, and that certainty felt more credible. People mistake explanation for authority. It's the opposite. Authority doesn't explain. It declares. And the act of explaining signals that you're operating from a place that requires validation. Access isn't just about information. It's about exposure. When you explain, you expose how you make decisions, what influences you, what you're afraid of, and that exposure creates openings. In negotiation, one side makes an offer. The other side asks why that number. The first side explains costs, market rate, internal budgets. Now the second side knows the constraints, the flexibility, the breaking points. They didn't gain information. They gained access, and access is control. You've done this in relationships. Explain why you need certain things, why you set certain boundaries, why you react the way you do. And the other person listened, nodded, seemed to understand. Then later, use that exact information to push your boundaries further. Because you didn't just communicate, you revealed the operating system. Explanation creates patterns. Repeated explanations create blueprints. and blueprints can be exploited. A parent explains to their child why certain rules exist. Safety, responsibility, consequences. The child listens, then tests the boundaries. Because they know the reasoning now. They know what the parent values, what scares them, what they'll compromise on. The explanation didn't create understanding. It created strategy. This is the trap of transparency. You think you're being open, honest, building connection. What you're doing is handing over the keys to your decision-making process. And once someone has those keys, they can unlock things you didn't intend to share. There are people who never explain their decisions. You find them frustrating, opaque, difficult. But watch what happens when you try to challenge them. There's nothing to grab onto, no reasoning to dispute, no logic to reverse. Their decisions are closed systems, and closed systems are much harder to penetrate. Explanation isn't generosity, it's exposure, and exposure always costs more than you think. A CEO makes a hiring decision. Employees question it. The CEO says nothing. Another CEO makes the same decision, then explains it in a company-wide email. Culture fit, strategic vision, long-term goals. The first CEO faces frustration, but the decision stands, immovable. The second CEO faces analysis. Employees debate whether the reasoning holds up, whether the explanation justifies the choice. The first CEO kept the decision intact. The second CEO opened it for review. This doesn't mean you never communicate. It means you recognize that explanation is not neutral communication. It's access. And access is power. Power you're giving away. You explain because you want people to understand. But understanding comes with a cost. The more they understand your reasoning, the more they can predict your decisions. And predictability is not strength. Later, you'll see exactly how repeated explanation makes you readable. How patterns emerge. How people start to anticipate your choices before you make them. How the moment you become predictable, you lose the ability to control outcomes. But first, you need to see what you're giving away every time you explain. Not just information, access. And access is leverage. Chapter 5. Predictability is born from explanation. You explain once. They listen. You explain again. They start to notice patterns. You explain a third time. They know what you're going to say before you say it. This is how predictability begins. Not from consistency, from explanation. Every explanation you give reveals a pattern. What you prioritize, what you avoid, what makes you uncomfortable, and patterns can be learned. A manager explains why they approve certain projects and reject others. Quality, feasibility, alignment with goals. Their team listens, takes notes. 6 months later, they know exactly what to emphasize in proposals, what language to use, what objections to preempt. The manager thinks their team has learned the standards. What they've actually learned is how to manipulate the manager's decision-making process. Predictable people are handled, not respected. They're easy, manageable, known quantities. And once you're known, you lose leverage. This is the exact moment authority starts leaking. Not when you make a bad decision, not when you fail, when you become readable. A woman always explains why she says no to social invitations. Too tired, too busy, already committed. Her friends start to notice the pattern. When she says she's too tired, they know she's really saying she's not interested. When she says she's too busy, they know she could make time if she wanted to. Now her explanations don't clarify anything. They reveal her priorities, and her friends adjust accordingly. They stop inviting her to certain events. Stop expecting her to show up. Stop treating her refusals as real boundaries. Because they've learned the pattern, and patterns can be bypassed. Explanation doesn't just expose your reasoning. It exposes your limits. What you'll tolerate, what you'll compromise on, what you'll defend. And once people know your limits, they know how far they can push. A parent always explains why they enforce certain rules. Homework first. Bedtime at 9. No screens during meals. The child listens, then tests. What if I finish homework after dinner? What if I stay up until 9:15? What if I just check one message? The parent explains again. Reasoning, consequences, expectations. The child absorbs the pattern, learns which rules are flexible, which explanations indicate room for negotiation. Now every rule comes with a built-in assumption. If I push back correctly, this can change. Repeated explanation forms patterns others can exploit. And exploitation doesn't require malice. It's just adaptation. People learn how you operate, and they operate accordingly. Contrast this with the person who doesn't explain. They make decisions. No pattern. No predictable reasoning. Sometimes they say yes. Sometimes no. No clear logic. No visible formula. It's maddening, but it's also unmanageable because there's no pattern to learn, no way to predict, no lever to pull. This is why powerful people seem inconsistent. Not because they are, but because their reasoning isn't visible. You can't predict what they'll do. You can't game their decisions. And that unpredictability is a form of control. You think explanation makes you understandable. It does. But understandable is the same as controllable. In negotiation, one side consistently explains their constraints, budget limits, timeline pressures, approval processes. The other side listens, takes notes, then uses those exact constraints to structure offers that seem reasonable but are actually exploitative. They didn't win through force. They won through pattern recognition. The moment you become readable, you lose the ability to control outcomes. Because control requires uncertainty. The other person needs to believe you might do something unexpected, that your decisions aren't formulaic, that pushing you could backfire. But if they've heard you explain enough times, they know exactly how you'll respond, and known responses can be managed. You see this in workplaces constantly. The boss who always explains their decisions is the boss employees learn to work around. Not openly, not defiantly, but strategically. They know what the boss values, what arguments will work, what timing is best. The boss thinks they're being collaborative, transparent. What they've actually done is train their team to optimize for their predictability. This doesn't mean you should be erratic. It means you should recognize the cost of making your reasoning visible. Every explanation is a data point, and enough data points create a model of how you think, how you decide, how you can be influenced. A woman explains to her partner why she needs alone time. Recharge, process, reset. Her partner listens, seems supportive, then, months later, uses that exact information against her. You said you need alone time to recharge, but you've been out with friends all week. You said you need space to process, but you're processing just fine when it's something you care about. She didn't just explain her needs. She revealed the pattern. And now her partner knows when her explanations are legitimate and when they're convenient. Predictability strips you of authority, not because predictability is weakness, but because it removes mystery, and mystery is a form of power. The person who never explains is unknowable. You don't know why they made that choice, what their priorities are, what influences them, and that lack of knowledge creates discomfort. Discomfort forces adjustment. The other person has to adapt to you because they can't predict you. But the person who explains repeatedly is transparent, and transparency in excess is vulnerability. This is the shift from authority to predictability, from control to being controlled, and it happens slowly, one explanation at a time. You don't notice it at first. People seem to understand you better. Interactions feel smoother. But then you realize they're not respecting your decisions more. They're just better at navigating around them. Later, you'll see the contrast more clearly. What silence does, what withholding explanation creates, how refusing to fill space forces others to operate in uncertainty. But first, you need to see this moment. The moment you became readable. The moment your explanations formed a pattern someone else could learn. The moment authority started leaking. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Chapter 6. Explanation versus silence. Explanation fills space. Silence does not. And the person who refuses to fill space holds power. You were taught that silence is evasive, rude, a failure to communicate. But silence is not absence. It's presence, controlled, deliberate, and it creates pressure. A manager is questioned about a decision. The team wants to know why. The manager says nothing, just looks at them. The silence stretches. Uncomfortable, heavy. Someone fills it, rephrases the question, offers their own interpretation, backs down. The manager still hasn't spoken, but the dynamic has shifted. Silence forces others to adjust, because humans cannot tolerate empty space. We fill it with words, with justification, with retreat, and the person who stays silent controls which of those happens. Explanation gives relief. It answers the question, resolves the tension, closes the loop. Silence denies relief. It leaves the question hanging, the tension intact, the loop open, and that discomfort is a form of control. You see this in confrontations. One person makes an accusation, demands an explanation. The other person explains, defends, justifies. Now, they're in the position of answering, reacting, submitting to the frame. Another person hears the same accusation, says nothing, just waits. The accuser has to escalate, or retreat, or reframe. But they can't sustain the pressure without a response to push against. Silence is not passivity. It's refusal. Refusal to engage on someone else's terms. Refusal to submit to their frame. Refusal to fill space they want filled. A woman is criticized by a family member. The criticism is vague, accusatory. Most people would explain, defend themselves, list reasons why the criticism is unfair. She says nothing. The family member keeps talking, repeats the criticism, adds details, gets more specific. Still nothing. Eventually, the family member backs down, or apologizes, or changes the subject, because the silence didn't give them anything to work with. This is what silence does. It removes the ladder. There's nothing to climb, nothing to argue against, nothing to negotiate, just absence. And absence is destabilizing. You think silence is withholding. It is, but withholding is not weakness. It's strategy. Explanation shows your hand. Silence keeps it hidden, and hidden hands win more often than revealed ones. In negotiation, one side makes a demand. The other side asks why. The first side explains. Now the second side knows the reasoning, the constraints, the flexibility. Another negotiation. Same demand, same question. The first side says nothing. The second side has to guess, assume, operate in uncertainty. And uncertainty weakens their position. Silence as pressure is not the same as silence as avoidance. Avoidance is retreat, walking away, refusing to engage at all. Pressure is presence, staying in the room, holding the space, refusing to fill it. You see this in high-stakes meetings. The person who talks the most loses, because they're reacting, explaining, justifying. The person who stays quiet controls the room, not by dominating the conversation, by refusing to participate in it on anyone else's terms. Strategic pauses are dominance, not hesitation, not uncertainty, deliberate gaps, moments where you could speak but choose not to, and those moments force the other person to reveal more than they intended. A lawyer asks a witness a question. The witness starts to answer, then stops, just looks at the lawyer. The lawyer rephrases, clarifies, offers additional context. The witness still hasn't answered, but now they know more about what the lawyer actually wants. The pause wasn't confusion. It was extraction. This doesn't mean you never speak. It means you recognize that every word you add is a choice. And sometimes the strongest choice is not to add anything at all. Explanation is generous. It gives. It shares. It opens. Silence is withholding. It denies. It protects. It closes. And protection is often more valuable than generosity. You explain because you think it will resolve tension. It does, temporarily. But what it actually does is train the other person to expect resolution, to believe that if they push hard enough, you'll fill the silence. And once they believe that, they'll push every time. The person who refuses to explain creates a different expectation. That pushing won't work. That silence is the answer. And eventually, people stop pushing. Not because they're satisfied, because it's exhausting to push against nothing. A parent is asked by their teenager why a certain rule exists. The parent could explain, give reasons, build understanding. Instead, they say nothing. The teenager asks again, pushes harder, demands an answer. The parent still says nothing. The teenager eventually stops asking, not because they understand, because the silence is immovable. This is the power shift, from explanation to silence, from giving to withholding, from reaction to presence. Silence doesn't answer questions. It makes questions irrelevant. You've been in conversations where someone refused to explain. It felt cold, dismissive, unfair. But notice what happened. Their decision stood. Your questions didn't change anything, because they didn't give you anything to argue against. Explanation invites engagement. Silence ends it. And the person who controls when engagement ends controls the interaction. This doesn't mean silence is always appropriate. It means you need to see what it does, how it shifts power, how it creates pressure, how it forces others to operate in discomfort, and how that discomfort often works in your favor. Later, you'll see what happens when explanation becomes a reflex. When you can't stop yourself from filling every silence, from answering every question, from defending every choice, when the inability to withhold becomes a structural weakness. But here's what you need to understand now. Explanation gives relief. Silence denies it, and denial is control. Part 3, the central break. Chapter 7, I'm just being honest. You think honesty is strength. It's not. Honesty is neutral. What you do with it determines whether it protects you or exposes you. And most of the time, you're using it to expose yourself. I'm just being honest. This is what people say right before they reveal too much, right before they explain their insecurities, their fears, their internal process. They think they're being authentic, vulnerable, real. What they're doing is handing over access. A woman tells her boss she's struggling with confidence in her new role. She explains how she feels, what she's worried about, what keeps her up at night. She thinks she's being honest, building trust. What she's done is reveal a weakness her boss will now accommodate or exploit. Not maliciously, not intentionally, but the information is there, and information changes how people treat you. Honesty doesn't create respect. It creates access. You confuse transparency with strength because you've been told that hiding things is dishonest. That real connection requires full disclosure. But full disclosure is only valuable when the other person has earned it, and most people haven't. Emotional explanation is disguised exposure. You think you're sharing, connecting, being open. What you're doing is making your internal state visible, manageable, predictable. A man tells his partner he feels anxious when she doesn't text back quickly. He explains the anxiety, where it comes from, how it affects him. He thinks he's being honest, communicating his needs. What he's done is give her a lever. Now she knows exactly what creates discomfort, what increases pressure, what she can withhold to get a reaction. She doesn't have to use it, but it's there. This is what emotional explanation does. It turns your feelings into tools someone else can operate. You see this in workplaces constantly. Someone admits they're uncomfortable with conflict. They explain why. Past experiences, personal tendencies, the way confrontation affects them. They think they're being self-aware. What they've done is telegraph exactly how to handle them. Now, every difficult conversation is adjusted, softened, managed around their discomfort, and they wonder why they're not taken seriously in high-stakes situations. Honesty is not weakness, but explaining your honesty is. There's a difference between stating how you feel and explaining why you feel it. One is information. The other is access. I'm not available tonight. Information. I'm not available tonight because I'm exhausted and I need time to recharge, and I've been feeling overwhelmed lately. Access. The first protects. The second exposes. You explain your emotions because you think it will create understanding. It does. But understanding is not the same as respect. A parent explains to their child why they're upset. Voice raised. Stress. Long day at work. The child listens. Learns the pattern. Next time the parent is upset, the child knows it's not really about them. It's about external stress. So the child stops taking the parent seriously because the parent explained away their authority. Emotional explanation trains others to control you, not through force, through knowledge. They know what triggers you, what soothes you, what makes you fold. And once they know that, they can navigate you. This doesn't mean you never express emotions. It means you recognize that every explanation you attach to those emotions is a blueprint someone else can study. I'm just being honest. No, you're being unguarded, and unguarded is not the same as strong. A woman tells her friend she's hurt by something the friend said. She explains the hurt, why it landed that way, what it reminded her of. The friend apologizes, seems understanding, but the next time they argue, the friend knows exactly what to say to create the same effect. Not out of cruelty, out of pattern recognition. The woman didn't just communicate her feelings. She revealed the wiring. Honesty without boundaries is recklessness. You think you're being open. You're being careless. You see this in relationships all the time. One person explains every emotional reaction, lists the reasons, traces the history, unpacks the psychology. The other person listens, nods, adjusts, and slowly, subtly, learns how to manage the first person's emotional state, not as a partner, as a handler. Explanation turns emotion into negotiation. You feel something, you explain why. Now the other person can argue with the why, dispute your reasoning, offer alternative interpretations, convince you that you shouldn't feel that way, and suddenly your emotions are up for debate. A man feels disrespected by a comment his coworker made. He explains why he feels that way. The context, the history, the implication. The coworker responds, "That's not what I meant. You're reading too much into it." Now the man is defending his feelings. If he hadn't explained, the feeling would simply exist, undebatable. But he gave reasons, and reasons can be questioned. This is the trap of emotional honesty. You think it will validate your experience. What it does is open your experience to review. Honesty is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used well or poorly. Most people use it poorly. They confuse disclosure with connection, vulnerability with strength, transparency with trust, and they explain themselves into positions they can't recover from. The person who doesn't explain their emotions is harder to read, harder to predict, harder to manage. You don't know why they're upset, what caused it, what will resolve it. So you have to take their emotions at face value, and that creates a different dynamic entirely. You explain because you want to be understood, but being understood comes with a cost. The more someone understands your emotional landscape, the more they can navigate it without your consent. Later, you'll see how explanation becomes a reflex in conflict, how people explain to manage tension, to de-escalate, to keep the peace, and how that reflex destroys authority. But first, you need to see this. Honesty doesn't create respect. It creates access, and access is leverage. Chapter 8. Explanation as Emotional Regulation. You explain to calm people down, to reduce tension, to smooth things over, to make the situation manageable. And every time you do, you lose position. Explanation is not just information. It's emotional labor. You're managing someone else's discomfort, anxiety, frustration. And the moment you take on that management, you become the stabilizer, not the leader. A manager announces a change in policy. The team reacts negatively. Confusion, resistance, frustration. The manager explains, walks them through the reasoning, addresses concerns, offers reassurance. The tension decreases. The manager thinks they handled it well. What they actually did was teach the team that resistance gets explanation, that if they push back, the manager will manage their emotions. This is what explanation as emotional regulation does. It turns you into a caretaker, a mediator, someone whose job is to make others comfortable. And caretakers don't hold authority. You see this in families constantly. A parent sets a rule. The child gets upset. The parent explains, not because the child needs the explanation, because the parent can't tolerate the child's distress. The explanation soothes. The child calms down. But the parent has just taught the child that emotional escalation leads to negotiation. If you explain to reduce tension, you surrender position. Not because explanation is wrong, but because the act itself signals that their discomfort controls you. Managing others' emotions costs authority, because authority doesn't soothe. It directs. And the moment you prioritize soothing over directing, you've shifted from leader to manager of feelings. A woman sets a boundary with a friend. The friend is hurt, upset, demands to know why. The woman could hold the boundary. Let the friend sit with the discomfort. Instead, she explains, softens the delivery, reassures the friend that it's not personal. The friend feels better, but the boundary is now negotiable because the woman showed that her priority is the friend's emotional state, not the boundary itself. This is the cost. You think you're being compassionate, considerate, emotionally intelligent. What you're doing is subordinating your position to someone else's comfort. Explanation as emotional regulation is a reflex. Someone gets upset. You explain. Someone feels anxious. You explain. Someone pushes back. You explain. And each time, you're reinforcing the same dynamic. Their emotions determine your actions. A CEO announces layoffs. Employees are devastated, angry, scared. The CEO could let them feel it. Hold the decision. Stay silent. Instead, the CEO explains. Market conditions, difficult choices, regret. The employees still feel devastated. But now they also feel managed. And being managed breeds resentment, not respect. The person who doesn't explain in moments of tension creates a different dynamic. The tension remains unresolved, heavy, and the other person has to deal with it, not by getting reassurance, by adjusting. You explain because you can't tolerate discomfort, not just your own, theirs. You want the room to feel stable, the conversation to feel resolved, the relationship to feel secure. And explanation is the tool you use to create that feeling. But stability bought through explanation is temporary because it's based on your willingness to manage their emotions indefinitely. A parent tells their teenager they can't go to a party. The teenager is furious, yells, slams doors. One parent explains, tries to calm the situation, lists reasons, offers compromises. The teenager eventually stops yelling, but the boundary has softened. Another parent says nothing, lets the teenager be angry. The anger doesn't go away, but the decision stands. The first parent prioritized peace. The second parent prioritized position. This doesn't mean you never care about how others feel. It means you recognize that making their feelings your responsibility weakens you. Explanation signals that you're invested in their emotional state. An investment is leverage. The more you invest in keeping them calm, the more power they have to destabilize you. You see this in workplaces. The manager who always explains when employees are upset is the manager employees escalate to. Not because they respect the manager, because they know escalation works. The manager who stays calm but doesn't explain trains employees to handle their own emotions. Not out of cruelty, out of necessity. Explanation as emotional regulation turns you into a stabilizer. And stabilizers are useful, necessary, appreciated, but they're not leaders. Leaders create tension. Hold it. Let others navigate it. Stabilizers absorb tension. Manage it. Resolve it. And the moment you become a stabilizer, you've exited the position of authority. A woman's coworker is upset about a project assignment. The coworker vents, complains, demands an explanation. The woman could redirect, hold the decision, let the coworker process on their own. Instead, she explains, justifies the choice, walks the coworker through the reasoning. The coworker feels heard. But now the woman is the person who manages discomfort, and that role sticks. This is the shift from decision maker to emotional manager, from authority to caretaker, and it happens one explanation at a time. You explain to de-escalate, but de-escalation is not leadership. It's conflict avoidance dressed as communication. And avoidance always costs more than confrontation, because confrontation is temporary. Avoidance is structural. Once you establish that you'll explain to keep the peace, you'll be expected to do it forever. Later, you'll see why stopping explanation creates friction, why people resist, why they push back harder, why the absence of explanation feels like abandonment to those who've been trained to expect it. But here's what you need to see now. Explanation doesn't resolve tension. It transfers responsibility for that tension onto you. And once you take responsibility for managing others' emotions, you lose the ability to hold firm decisions. Because firm decisions create discomfort, and you've already shown you can't tolerate that. Chapter 9. Why stopping explanation creates conflict. You explain to avoid conflict. Not consciously, not always, but the impulse is there. Conflict is uncomfortable. Explanation smooths it over. Conflict creates tension. Explanation releases it. Conflict demands presence. Explanation provides distance. And you've learned that explanation is easier than confrontation. It is, but easier is not the same as stronger. A man tells his partner he won't be attending a family event. The partner is upset, demands to know why. The man could hold the decision. Let the upset sit there. Instead, he explains work, exhaustion, the need for rest. The partner counters, offers solutions, suggests compromises. Now they're negotiating because the man used explanation to avoid the conflict of simply saying no. This is what explanation does in conflict. It dilutes the confrontation, turns a firm position into a discussable topic. And once something is discussable, it's negotiable. Stopping explanation creates friction. People don't know how to respond to a decision that doesn't come with reasons. It feels cold, unfair, dismissive, and they push back. But that pushback is not a failure. It's a test of whether your decision is real, whether you'll hold it, whether you mean what you say. And the moment you explain to ease the pushback, you've failed the test. A manager denies a request for additional resources. The employee pushes back, argues, insists it's necessary. One manager explains budgets, priorities, constraints. The employee counters every point. Now it's a debate. Another manager simply says no. The employee pushes harder. The manager says nothing. Eventually, the employee stops pushing, not because they agree, because there's nothing to push against. Explanation is avoidance. You think you're being clear. You're being defensive. You think you're preventing conflict. You're prolonging it. Because explanation doesn't end conflict. It redirects it from a decision itself to the reasoning behind it. Power always produces friction, not because power is aggressive, but because power disrupts. It changes things, denies things, redirects things, and disruption creates resistance. You can't hold power and avoid conflict. The two are incompatible. A parent enforces a rule. The child resists, argues, tests. One parent explains, tries to make the child understand, justify the rule. The resistance continues because the child isn't looking for understanding. They're looking for leverage. Another parent enforces the rule. No explanation, just enforcement. The resistance intensifies, then fades, because there's no leverage to find. Stopping explanation doesn't eliminate conflict. It clarifies it. The conflict is no longer about whether your reasoning is sound. It's about whether your decision will stand. And that's a much cleaner fight. You avoid this because you think conflict is failure. That good leaders, good partners, good people don't create friction. But friction is not failure. It's feedback. Feedback that your decision matters, that it has weight, that it's real. The absence of conflict is not peace. It's compliance or irrelevance, and neither of those are positions of power. You explain because you're afraid of what happens if you don't. Afraid people will be upset, angry, hurt. Afraid the relationship will fracture. The respect will erode. The connection will break. But here's what you don't see. Explanation doesn't prevent those things. It delays them. A woman repeatedly explains her decisions to her family. Every choice, every boundary, every change. She thinks she's maintaining harmony. What she's doing is teaching them that her decisions are always up for review. So when she finally stops explaining, they don't respect the shift. They escalate because the pattern has been broken, and breaking patterns creates conflict. This is the cost of explanation as conflict avoidance. It works short-term. It keeps things smooth. It prevents immediate friction, but builds long-term fragility because you've never tested whether your decisions can withstand pushback. Conflict is a necessary test of position. If your decision can't survive someone being upset, it wasn't a real decision. It was a preference, a suggestion, a placeholder, and placeholders don't command respect. You see this in professional settings. The leader who avoids conflict by over-explaining is the leader no one fears disappointing. Because disappointment doesn't produce consequences. It produces more explanation. The leader who holds decisions despite conflict is the leader people take seriously. Not because they're harsh, because they're unmoved. Stopping explanation creates conflict because it forces the other person to confront reality. The reality that your decision is final, that their discomfort won't change it, that pushback won't work, and that reality is uncomfortable. But discomfort is not your responsibility to manage. A teenager asks to borrow the car. The parent says no. The teenager demands an explanation. The parent could explain, justify, soften the blow, or the parent could say nothing. The teenager will be upset either way. But only one response teaches the teenager that decisions are final. This is where most people break. They can't tolerate the tension, the silence, the anger, so they explain. And the moment they do, the conflict shifts from will this decision stand to is this reasoning good enough? And reasoning can always be questioned. Next, you'll see what replaces explanation, what you do instead, what you say, how you hold position without justifying it, and why most people can't do it. Not because it's complicated, because it requires something they've never practiced. Comfort with discomfort, presence in conflict, the ability to let someone be upset without trying to fix it. But before that, you need to sit with this. Explanation is not clarity. It's avoidance. And avoidance always costs more than confrontation. Part 4. What replaces explanation? Chapter 10. Decisions without defense. A decision needs nothing beyond itself. It doesn't need justification, context, reasoning. It just needs to exist. But you've been taught that undecorated decisions are harsh, incomplete, rude. So you add explanation. You soften the edges. You make it palatable. And in doing so, you make it weak. Decisions don't defend themselves. They stand, or they don't. And the moment you defend them, you've signaled they need defending. A woman declines a meeting request. Just, I won't be able to attend. No apology. No reason. No alternative suggested. The person who invited her is confused, maybe annoyed, but the decision is complete. Another woman declines the same request. I won't be able to attend because I have a conflict and I'm already overbooked this week, and I really need to focus on other priorities. The person who invited her now has multiple points to address. Can a conflict be moved? Is it really a priority? What if the meeting is rescheduled? The first woman closed the door. The second woman left it open. Undecorated decisions carry weight, not because they're aggressive, because they're final. There's nothing to negotiate, nothing to question, nothing to soften, just the decision itself. You see this in high-level professional settings. A director tells the team the project is moving forward. No explanation of why, no discussion of alternatives. Just, we're moving forward. The team might resist, might want to understand, but the decision isn't waiting for their understanding. Short, factual statements signal authority. This is what's happening. I won't be available. The answer is no. No decoration. No justification. No apology. Just fact. You think this sounds cold? It does. But cold is not the same as wrong. A man leaves a social gathering early. Someone asks why. He says, I'm leaving. That's it. The person pushes. Already? We just got here. Is everything okay? He says nothing. Just leaves. It feels abrupt. Maybe rude. But his decision didn't require their approval. Another man leaves early. Explains. Tired. Early morning. Long week. Now the group offers solutions. Coffee. A second wind. Just one more hour. His decision is being managed by the group. The first man's decision managed itself. Action without justification is rare. Most people can't do it. They feel compelled to explain, to soften, to make the other person understand. But understanding is not required for a decision to be valid. A manager assigns a project to an employee. The employee asks why they were chosen. One manager explains, skills, availability, development opportunity. Now the employee knows the criteria, can question whether they really fit, can suggest someone else might be better. Another manager says, you're on this project. The employee wants to know why. The manager says nothing else. The employee eventually stops asking, because the decision isn't negotiable. Decisions without defense shift power. They force the other person to accept without understanding. And acceptance without understanding is a stronger foundation than acceptance through agreement. You explain because you want buy-in. You want the other person to see why your decision makes sense. But buy-in is optional. Compliance is not. A parent tells their child they're switching schools. The child asks why. The parent explains. Better programs. Safer environment. Opportunities. The child argues every point. Questions the reasoning. Resists. Another parent says, you're switching schools. The child asks why. The parent says, because that's the decision. The child is upset, but there's no argument to make. The first parent wanted the child to agree. The second parent required the child to adjust. This doesn't mean you never communicate. It means you recognize that decisions are complete without explanation. And adding explanation doesn't strengthen them. It weakens them. Undefended decisions feel uncomfortable. To you, to the other person. But discomfort is not dysfunction. It's clarity. You've encountered people who make decisions this way. They state. They act. They move forward, and you found it frustrating because you wanted to understand, to question, to negotiate, but their decisions didn't need your participation. This is the shift from decisions that seek approval to decisions that simply exist, from choices that require defense to choices that stand alone, from justification to presence. A CEO announces a strategic change. Employees demand explanation. The CEO says, "This is the direction we're going." No breakdown, no reasoning, no reassurance. The employees are unsettled, but the decision is immovable. Another CEO makes the same announcement, then spends an hour explaining why. Market analysis, competitive positioning, long-term vision. The employees feel informed, but now the decision feels like a proposal they can challenge. Decisions don't defend themselves. They don't need to. They exist. They're executed. They move forward. And the moment you add defense, you've admitted the decision is incomplete without it. Later, you'll see how boundaries work the same way. How explained boundaries aren't really boundaries at all. How justification turns limits into negotiations. But first, you need to see this. A decision is whole the moment it's made. Everything you add after that is subtraction. Chapter 11. Boundaries that don't explain. A boundary is a fact, not an argument, not a request, not a negotiation, a fact. But you treat boundaries like proposals. You set them, then you explain them, justify them, defend them. And the moment you do, they stop being boundaries. A woman tells her family she won't be available for calls after 9 p.m. Then she explains work, sleep schedule, mental health. Her family listens. Then they negotiate. What about emergencies? What if it's important? What if it's just a quick question? She didn't set a boundary. She opened a discussion. Another woman says the same thing. No calls after 9 p.m. Her family asks why. She says nothing. They're frustrated, but the boundary stands because she didn't give them anything to argue with. Explained boundaries are not real boundaries. They're conditions, and conditions can be challenged. You think justification makes boundaries more reasonable. It doesn't. It makes them weaker. Because once you justify a boundary, you've implied that the justification is what makes the boundary valid. And if the justification changes, the boundary becomes negotiable. A man tells his co-workers he doesn't check email on weekends, then explains work-life balance, family time, recharge. His co-workers understand. They respect it until something urgent comes up. Then they email anyway, because the justification was specific, and this situation doesn't fit. Another man says the same thing. No email on weekends. Co-workers ask why. He doesn't answer. They email anyway at first, but he doesn't respond. Eventually, they stop, because the boundary isn't conditional. It's absolute. Justification erodes limits. It turns a hard line into a soft guideline. It suggests that if the reasoning doesn't apply, the boundary doesn't either. Boundaries as facts don't require agreement. They don't require understanding. They just require acknowledgement. A parent sets a bedtime, 8 p.m. The child asks why. The parent explains. Growth, rest, routine. The child negotiates. But I'm not tired. But tomorrow is Saturday. But my friend stays up later. The boundary is now a debate. Another parent sets the same bedtime. The child asks why. The parent says, because that's bedtime. The child resists. But there's no leverage. The boundary is a fact, not a position to defend. You explain boundaries because you want the other person to respect them. But respect doesn't come from understanding your reasons. It comes from experiencing the consistency of enforcement. A woman tells her partner she needs 1 evening a week alone, then explains introversion, processing time, self-care. Her partner agrees, seems supportive, but then starts asking if certain weeks count, if she really needs it this week, if they can make an exception, because the explanation made the boundary feel optional. Another woman says the same thing. One evening a week. No explanation. Her partner pushes back. Wants to know why. She doesn't engage. The partner eventually stops asking because the boundary wasn't presented as something to understand, just something to respect. This is the difference. Explained boundaries invite negotiation. Unexplained boundaries demand adjustment. You see this at work constantly. Someone sets a boundary around their availability, then lists the reasons. Colleagues listen, then find exceptions. Edge cases. Situations where the reasoning doesn't quite fit. The boundary erodes. Not because it was wrong, because it was explained. Boundaries without explanation feel harsh. They do, but harsh is not the same as unreasonable. A freelancer tells a client they don't work weekends. No explanation, just a fact. The client is annoyed, wants to know why, pushes back. The freelancer doesn't engage. The client eventually accepts it because there's no argument to make, no reasoning to dispute. Another freelancer sets the same boundary, then explains family, rest, sustainability. The client understands, agrees. Then a deadline approaches. The client asks for an exception. Just this once. It's really important. The freelancer's own explanation is now being used against the boundary. This is the cost of justification. It gives others the tools to dismantle what you've said. Boundaries are not arguments. They're declarations. And declarations don't require the other person's agreement. You explain boundaries because you feel guilty setting them, like you owe the other person a reason, like the boundary is selfish without justification. But boundaries are not acts of selfishness. They're acts of structure, and structure doesn't apologize. A manager tells their team they won't respond to messages after 7 p.m., then explains burnout prevention, personal time, modeling healthy habits. The team nods, understands. Then someone messages at 7:15. Just a quick question. Just this once. The manager responds, because the explanation created empathy, and empathy creates exceptions. Another manager sets the same boundary. No explanation. Someone messages after 7. No response. They try again the next night. No response. Eventually, they stop. Because the boundary is a fact, not a preference. Explained boundaries teach people that boundaries are negotiable. Unexplained boundaries teach people that boundaries are real. Later, you'll see how silence operates the same way. How refusing to fill space forces others to navigate uncertainty. How withholding explanation shifts control entirely. But here's what you need to see now. A boundary doesn't need your reasons to be valid. It needs your consistency. And every explanation you add undermines that consistency. Because you've taught the other person that the boundary is conditional. And conditional boundaries aren't boundaries at all. Chapter 12. Silence as control. Someone asks you a question. You could answer, explain, justify, or you could say nothing. Most people can't tolerate that silence, so they fill it. And the moment they do, they've lost control of the interaction. Silence after a question is not evasion. It's refusal. Refusal to engage on their terms. Refusal to submit to their frame. Refusal to let their discomfort dictate your response. A manager is questioned about a decision in a meeting. The room waits for an answer. The manager says nothing. Just looks at the person who asked. The silence stretches. Uncomfortable. Heavy. Someone else fills it. Rephrases the question. Offers their own interpretation. Backs down. The manager still hasn't spoken. But the dynamic has shifted. This is what silence does. It forces the other person to operate in uncertainty. And uncertainty weakens their position. You are taught that silence is rude. That not answering is disrespectful. But silence is not absence of communication. It's communication of a different kind. It says, I don't owe you an answer. It says, your question doesn't control me. It says, I'm comfortable with your discomfort. Refusal to fill space is dominance, not aggressive dominance. Structural dominance. You're not attacking. You're withholding. And withholding creates pressure the other person has to navigate. A woman is criticized by a colleague. The criticism is vague. Passive-aggressive. Most people would defend themselves. Explain. Counter the criticism. She says nothing. The colleague keeps talking. Repeats the criticism. Adds details. Gets more specific. Still nothing. Eventually, the colleague retreats, or apologizes, or changes the subject, because the silence didn't give them anything to work with. Silence lets others expose themselves. They talk more, reveal more, overextend, and the more they expose, the weaker their position becomes. You see this in negotiations constantly. One side makes an offer. The other side asks for justification. The first side explains, breaks down the numbers, lists the reasoning. Now the second side knows the constraints, the flexibility, the pressure points. Another negotiation. Same offer, same question. The first side says nothing. The second side has to guess, fill the silence, reveal their own position. And in doing so, they've given away leverage. Silence after a challenge is a power move. Not because it's confrontational, because it's unmoved. The challenge doesn't rattle you, doesn't demand a response, doesn't shift your position. It just exists, and you let it. A parent is questioned by their teenager. Why can't I go to the party? One parent explains, safety, responsibility, trust. The teenager argues every point. Another parent says nothing. The teenager pushes harder, demands an explanation. The parent still says nothing. Eventually, the teenager stops asking, because there's no argument to make against silence. This doesn't mean you never speak. It means you recognize that every word is a choice. And sometimes the most powerful choice is not to speak at all. Silence is uncomfortable. For you, for them. But discomfort is not a problem to solve. It's a dynamic to hold. You explain because you want to relieve the tension. But tension is leverage. The moment you relieve it, you've given away control. A lawyer is questioned on the stand. A hostile question designed to provoke explanation. One lawyer answers, provides context, tries to clarify. Now they're defending, reacting, operating in the questioner's frame. Another lawyer pauses, looks at the questioner, says nothing. The questioner repeats the question, reframes it, gets more aggressive. The lawyer still says nothing. Eventually, the questioner moves on, because the silence is unbreakable. Strategic silence shifts control, from the person asking to the person withholding, from the person demanding explanation to the person refusing to provide it. You've been in conversations where someone refused to explain. It drove you insane. You wanted answers, clarity, resolution, but they gave you nothing. And eventually, you had to adjust. Not because you agreed, because you had no other option. This is the power of silence. It removes all other options. The person can't negotiate, can't argue, can't find leverage, because there's nothing to push against. A manager is asked why they promoted one employee over another. The question is loaded, accusatory. One manager explains, performance metrics, team fit, growth potential. Now the conversation is about whether those reasons are valid. Another manager says nothing. The person pushes, insists on an answer. The manager still says nothing. The person eventually stops asking, because the silence is absolute. Silence after questions or challenges is not passive. It's active refusal. Refusal to be drawn into a debate you didn't agree to. Refusal to justify a decision that doesn't require justification. Refusal to manage someone else's discomfort. This is the final shift, from explanation to silence, from reaction to presence, from defending your position to simply holding it. You control access now, not by giving it freely, by withholding it strategically. And withholding is control. People will push back, demand answers, escalate. Let them. The pressure is theirs to manage, not yours. Silence is not cruelty. It's boundary. And boundaries don't explain themselves. They just exist. This is what replaces explanation. Not aggression. Not harshness. Not refusal to communicate. Presence. Decisions that stand without defense. Boundaries that exist without justification. Silence that refuses to fill space. And if you can hold these, you don't need to explain anything, because your position speaks for itself. Final fixation. You've been explaining yourself your entire life. Every decision, every boundary, every choice, and you thought you were being clear. You weren't. Explanation is not clarity. It's submission, a signal that your choices require external validation, a blueprint others can study, predict, exploit. The moment you explain, you lose position, not because explanation is inherently wrong, but because of what it does. It creates access to your reasoning, your priorities, your vulnerabilities, and access is leverage. Every explanation you give is a map of how you think, what moves you, what breaks you, and people who have that map can navigate you. You explain because you want to be understood, but understanding comes at a cost. The more someone understands your internal logic, the more they can control it. Predictable people are managed, not respected. They're known, readable, easy, and easy is not powerful. You explain to avoid conflict, but conflict is not failure. It's feedback. Feedback that your decision has weight, that it matters, that it's real. Power always produces friction, and if you can't tolerate friction, you can't hold power. You explain to manage others' emotions, but managing emotions is not leadership. It's caretaking, and caretakers don't command authority. Explanation turns you into a stabilizer, someone whose job is to make others comfortable with your choices. And once you take on that job, you can't stop doing it. There's a version of you that doesn't explain, that makes decisions and lets them stand, sets boundaries without justification, holds silence when others demand answers. That version exists, but you won't become them by explaining better. You'll become them by stopping. This is the choice. You can explain, or you can hold position, not both. Explanation invites evaluation. Position demands adjustment. Decisions don't defend themselves. They stand, or they don't. And the moment you defend them, you've admitted they're incomplete. Boundaries are facts, not arguments, not proposals, not negotiations. And facts don't require the other person's agreement. Silence is control, not passive control, active refusal. Refusal to operate on someone else's terms. Refusal to fill space they want filled. Refusal to manage discomfort that isn't yours to carry. Every explanation you give makes you manageable. Not respected, manageable. This won't feel natural at first. Stopping explanation will create tension, pushback, conflict. People will demand reasons, insist on clarity, escalate their discomfort. Let them. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. You've been trained to believe that withholding explanation is cruel. It's not. It's boundary. And boundaries don't apologize. If this changed how you hear yourself speak, stay. If you noticed how often you defend choices that don't need defending, stay. If you saw the pattern in your explanations, the predictability, the leverage you've given away, stay. Because now you can't unsee it. Every time you explain, you'll feel the shift. The moment you hand over access. The moment you invite evaluation. The moment position slips. And you'll have to decide, do you keep explaining or do you stop? Explanation is access. Access is leverage. Leverage is control. And the person who controls is the person who withholds. You can explain, or you can hold position, not both.